guys, welcome back. I'm Laura, I'm a hairstylist, and today we're going to talk about how often you should be going to the salon. So this video should be helpful on whether you're just wondering how often you should go based on what you currently have, or if you're thinking about getting a new haircut and style, but aren't sure about how much maintenance this new look is going to be for you. Now, I also want to point out that there are things that you can do to turn a high maintenance look into a low maintenance look. For example, if you're an all over scalp to ends blonde, very similar to my hair color, and you love wearing your hair all over platinum blonde, but you want the look to be a little bit lower maintenance for you than needing to go in to get your roots touched up every 4 weeks. Something you can do is have a root smudge added, which is essentially a darker toner that is going to marry your new growth color into the blonde color and allow your roots to grow out a little bit more seamlessly than a harsh line like the one I have right here. All right, so we're first going to talk about how often you should be getting your haircuts. And this is completely dependent on the type of haircut that you have. So if you have a women's haircut and it's short, let's say a pixie or a bob, you're gonna need your haircut a lot sooner than somebody that has long hair. On average, pixies typically need to be cut every 3 to 4 weeks, and bobs on an average of every 4 to 6 weeks. In order for a pixie to keep its shape and not get too bulky, it's gonna need to have some length and texture removed from it. And when bobs get too long, they can become out of shape and start to flip in certain areas where they used to go under. Now, if you have a mid-length haircut, this is somewhere around your shoulder length. This could be a long bob or just a collarbone cut. Now, mid-length cuts can go a bit longer than shorter length cuts, but it will start to become a longer cut if some of that length isn't taken up on an average of every 4 to 8 weeks. These cuts are great because they're kind of the best of both worlds. You feel like you have shorter hair, but you can still pull it back into a braid or a ponytail like a long cut can. Now, if you have long hair, you can push it from every 6 to 12 weeks based on the condition of your hair. If your hair is not bleached and it's healthy, you should be able to go at least 12 weeks. I don't recommend going more than 12 weeks just because you will start to get some split ends. And if your hair is long and bleached or damaged, you're gonna wanna trim this on minimum of every 6 weeks, just so your hair isn't breaking and getting shorter and shorter. Now, if you're trying to grow out your hair, you may think that you're able to go a really long time without getting it cut because you're trying to grow it out. But ultimately, I still don't recommend ever going longer than 12 weeks without even just a baby trim. You need to keep the split ends at bay if you want it to keep growing long and healthy. If you don't, the ends are gonna become thin and straggly, and you're gonna need to do a heftier haircut when you do finally go in for a cut. So on average, when you're looking to grow out your hair, you should trim it every 4 to 12 weeks. Now, before we go on to color, I want to talk about how often men should be getting their hair cut. If they wear a skin fade or a very, very short, close fade, they're gonna need it cut as often as 2 to 4 weeks. 4 weeks is pushing it for a skin fade. I have several men that schedule their reoccurring appointments every 2 weeks because it really changes the look of a skin fade if it starts to grow out at all. Now, for the regular fades and short scissor cuts, they can push it a little bit longer. On average, these cuts will need to be shaped up every 4 to 6 weeks. These cuts will generally need to come in for a trim once the hair starts to grow over the ears or down on the neck. It also may become harder for them to style up top if it gets too long and bulky. And for the longer men's haircuts, let's say a scissor cut or a skater boy haircut or anything that's a long scissor cut that may be below the ear, these cuts can push it every 6 to 8 weeks. If you go past 8 weeks, the shape is gonna start to change. And even if they wanna continue growing it out further, you will need it shaped up a little bit after 8 weeks. Typically, this means cutting the back so you don't end up growing a mullet. Okay, now let's talk about how often you should be getting your hair colored based on the style you have. So first, we're gonna talk about how often you should be getting your roots touched up. And when I say roots touched up, I don't mean anything involving highlights. This is simply an all over color, for example, what I have, or the opposite, which is a gray coverage touch up. So you will have darker hair and gray roots growing in. On average, roots are gonna need touched up every 3 to 5 weeks. I had several clients that would come in every 3 weeks for their root touch-ups just because they did not want to see an ounce of gray hair. 3 weeks was about the maximum that we could push it for some of these clients. And as a blonde, I have touched up my roots every 3 weeks as well, just because I didn't want to see this dark line at the top. Now, especially for an all-over bleach and tone application, you should never push this past 5 weeks. And the reason for this is because it would then become a corrective color service after the fact. This is because the hair right at the scalp processes a little bit quicker because of the heat coming off of your head. The hair that is past 1/2 inch will process slower because there's not as much heat touching it. So if your roots have grown out a full inch, you're gonna have some banding there where the hair right against your scalp is gonna process good, but the other 1/2 inch of hair in through here won't process as quickly, and you will wind up with a yellow band. This can be very difficult for stylists to fix, so it would become a corrective color service if you grow your hair out past 5 weeks for a bleach and tone service. Now, if you're not a bleach and tone and you don't have gray, you can push this a little bit further if you get just a full color deposit. So on average, a full color deposit should need touched up every 5 to 10 weeks. All right, let's move on to how often you should have your highlights or balayage touched up. So balayage and foliage is going to last quite a bit longer than traditional foil highlights. These are the services that are going to last you 10 weeks to 6 months. This is because the way these techniques are applied is so that the color grows out really seamlessly. Either they're tapered into the natural color or a root smudge is applied in order to make the color grow out really nicely. So for balayage and foliage, you should only need to have these blonde pieces touched up at a minimum of 10 weeks. Now, traditional highlights are not as low maintenance as balayage or foliage is, so let's go over how long those will take. Typically, I don't recommend getting a full highlight every time you come in. Oftentimes, we can do a full highlight and then maybe the next time we do a partial highlight or even a mini highlight. And so a full highlight is obviously when all of your hair is highlighted. A partial highlight is where the top, the sides, and maybe a few pieces underneath here is highlighted, but we leave out a good amount of hair throughout the mid and back of the head. And a mini highlight is typically just a few foils on top or around the face. So you should only need to get a full highlight every 12 weeks or every 3rd highlight service. If you do a full highlight sooner than this, you're gonna end up becoming overly blonde. I guess unless that's what you're going for. But if that's what you're going for, you may wanna look for a scalp to ends bleach and tone. Now you should get a partial highlight every 10 weeks or every other color service. Some choose to get this in rotation with a full highlight, or they may just choose to leave out some parts of their hair and not have highlights everywhere. On a mini highlight, you can get more often, I would say every 8 weeks or so. Again, you can mix this in rotation with your full and partial highlights, or some people may only choose to get a mini highlight. Again, with a mini, there is not a whole lot of foils being placed in the hair, so that's why you can do this one more often. Okay, now that we've talked about all of our blonding services, I want to talk about how often you should get a toner or a gloss. Now, some people actually don't get them at all, and others will come in between their highlighting services just to have their toner freshened up. This is typically dependent on how you care for your hair at home. If you use toning shampoos and conditioners, then you may not need to come in for this service at all. Many people can get by using purple shampoo or color depositing shampoos and conditioners just to maintain their color between services. But on average, if you do choose to get your toner or gloss in between your highlights, you'll typically want to do this every 4 to 8 weeks. So this will basically fall right in between your highlight appointments. If you're getting your mini highlights done every 8 weeks, then you'll want to get your toner reapplied after 4 weeks. Or if you push it to 10 weeks, then you'll want to get your toner after 5 weeks. Okay, lastly, I want to talk about how often you should get keratin treatments done. Now, keratin treatments are protein treatments that strengthen the hair. They reduce frizz and make the hair a little bit more manageable. Now, the condition of your hair is the determining factor in how long you should go between your keratin services. If your hair is damaged, overprocessed, or porous, that means the outer layer or the cuticle of your hair is opened up and the keratin treatment is going to slip out much quicker. But if your hair is healthier, then the outer layer stays closed better and the keratin treatment will last a lot longer. On average, you'll want to get a keratin treatment every 12 to 20 weeks. You'll begin to notice as the keratin treatment fades out that your hair is becoming a little more unmanageable. So this should help you in determining how often in that 12 to 20 week time frame you should be coming in. So to wrap it up, I want to say that all of these time frames are variable based on the condition of your hair and how you care for it at home. You may need to come in more frequently if your hair is damaged, overprocessed, you iron it frequently, or you don't use toning products. And if your hair is extremely healthy, virgin, and you don't iron it, then you can certainly push it a lot further. All right, guys, that's gonna be it for this video. Leave me any questions that you have in the comment section, and make sure you subscribe if you wanna make every day a good hair day. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you on the next one.